No, she's not hurt. She's asleep like the others.
Cabell's safe!
Cabell!
Well done, Gordon!
Well, they laughed at me for sticking to my gas mask, but thanks to that, I'm here and everyone else is sleeping. I wonder if they'll ever use gas masks again.
Sir!
What is it?
This man's not sleeping. He's dead.
Dead in his world, dead with him, and a new world beginning. Poor old boss, he and his flags and his folly. And now for the rule of the air, and a new life for mankind. Our job is only beginning. For now, we have to put the world in order. It will be a long and complicated struggle. But we have the unity of a common order and a common knowledge. This is how I conceive our plan of operations. First, the roundup of brigands, that last dismal vestige of ancient predatory soldiery, the last would-be conquerors. Then settle, organize, advance, this zone, then that, and at last, wings over the world, and a new world begins. Do you realize the immense task we shall undertake when we set ourselves to an active and aggressive peace? When we direct our energies to tear out the wealth of this planet and exploit all these giant possibilities of science that have been squandered hitherto upon war and senseless competition? We shall excavate the eternal hills. We shall make such use of the treasures of sky and sea and earth as men have never dreamt of hitherto. I would that I could see our children's children in this world we shall win for them. But in them and through them, we shall live again.
Said, I think the AI moment is one of the most transformative moments any of us have ever seen or will see in our lifetimes. So making sure the US is at the forefront, and I think your administration is investing a lot. Already the AI action plan under your leadership, I think, is a great start, and we look forward to working together, and thanks for your leadership.
Great job you're doing. Incredible, really, job. Lisa, how about you?
Well, Mr. President, it's such an honor to be here, and the incredible work that your administration has done to support the semiconductor industry. You know, we're building the brains behind all of the wonderful AI that's being built here. And I think the amount of acceleration that we've seen just in the few short months that the administration has been in place is really, we're so grateful for that support. And we had a wonderful event this afternoon with the First Lady's support of the AI education plan. So I think the main message is we are all in to make sure that America wins the AI race, and it's an honor to be here.
And one of the things that I think has made this industry unique is not only the innovation, but it's the market access that you have obviously championed for us all over the world, and also the trust the world has on American technology. I think that everything that you're doing in terms of setting in place the platform where the rest of the world can not only use our technology but trust our technology more than any other alternative is perhaps the most important issue. And you and your policies are really helping a lot. So thank you very much. And also I wanted to thank Madam First Lady for hosting what I think is perhaps the most defining issue, which is about skilling and economic opportunity that comes with AI. And so I deeply appreciate your leadership there.
Well, I'm in the second phase of my career, giving away all the wonderful money that Satya's good work has helped multiply a lot. But I think the thing that ties my first career that I still spend some time on because AI is so phenomenal, and my second career is innovation, innovating in health in areas like vaccines or gene editing, and the President and I are talking about taking American innovation to the next level to cure and even eradicate some of these diseases. He mentioned polio, which is one that we're close. We don't need new science on that one. For some like HIV and sickle cell, we do need new science, but the U.S. Has the seeds that in the same way that warp speed took those seeds and put them together, I think something fantastic can be done. AI for our foundation is that we want a doctor for everyone in Africa through AI. We want farmers to have incredible advice and, kids to have a chance to learn. So the work being done by the people at this table is changing the world. It's, coming fast, so it's great. We all get together and talk about how the U.S. can lead in this key area and apply it even to the poorest outside the U.S. as well as to our great citizens. So thank you for incredible leadership, including getting this group together.
Thank you, Bill. That's very nice.
Every one of these advancements is powered by AI. The robots are here. Our future is no longer science fiction.
Rowboats. The rowboats are here. How many times do you think you've heard somebody scoffing at the idea of a cabal of men sitting around a boardroom table and planning how they're going to enslave the world? I don't know. I thought this tech meeting at the White House was probably one of the closest things we've ever come to seeing that in real life. I mean, there was the Project Stargate announcement at the beginning of the presidential term. But yeah, I mean, if you had talked to anybody in, say, 2020, after 2021, after the election was supposedly stolen and everyone was all up in arms about that, we had January 6th, and the COVID jabs turned into this big mandate nightmare thanks to Operation Warp Speed. I mean, if you had told any of the Trump faithful 4 or 5 years ago that we'd be back here at the table with Bill Gates, I doubt many people would even believe you. And yet here we are. And that seems like probably an even more pertinent meeting to take note of, especially just with the developments of the last few days and how everyone's emotions and reactions are being, triggered. And, man, it's crazy. Here we are. Another 9/11 anniversary has come and gone. And the timing of it all with this latest traumatic event seems rather coincidentally timed. But yeah, anyways, I recently watched, before we get into all that, I watched this movie for the first time recently, Things to Come, based on the book by H.G. Wells, The Shape of Things to Come. I'd never seen it before, but it was pretty interesting, actually, and ties into so much of what's going on in the headlines today in terms of the looming prospect of another world war, and the theme of technocracy, and especially for us biblical cosmologists, the propaganda involving space travel and going to the moon. It's all this stuff is in there. But yeah, it's also interesting in terms of famous works of science fiction that oddly predict things that happened in the future. It's got to be one of the most noteworthy of these quasi-prophetic science fiction novels. I mean, everyone knows, H.G. Wells was a Fabian socialist, and after watching this movie and reading about the book, it's hard not to conclude that he was pretty tapped into the movers and shakers of, the social engineers. I mean, this movie, he wrote the book came out in 1933, and then the movie was made 3 years later in 1936. And just a lot of the special effects and that's pretty much the more impressive part of the movie itself. But the writing is just, it doesn't really even have all that much of a plot, but it's more just kind of monologues by these different characters to kind of espouse his beliefs in a one-world government. The one thing that they don't include in the movie, though, is the eradication of religion, which I thought was interesting. Apparently they didn't think people were ready to see that on the big screen, and it kind of flopped in the theaters too. It was not like a big commercial success at the time, but it's a complete propaganda movie, and oddly predicted, the start of World War II. In the book, it starts in 1940, and of course, in 1939 is when it really kicked off, and had the concept of aerial bombardment of cities that had never really happened in warfare from bomber planes, like it did in World War II. It even showed a helicopter before helicopters were invented, and apparently the Wings of the World organization that this guy John Cabal, that's really his name in the story, Hitler was so impressed. He saw this movie and was so enamored by the Wings of the World organization that he wanted the Luftwaffe to be modeled after them. So it has all these like fascist elements in it, but then it's totally a representation of technocracy taking over after, because in the book, World War II basically goes on for like 30 years, on into like the 70s. And so that nobody even remembers what they were fighting for in the first place, and everyone's just the whole world is so destroyed from war, and it's just being run by all these little local warlords. And then the Wings of the World, with their, advanced technology, swoop in and subdue the warlords and restore order. And so this guy John Cabal is kind of the first one to show up in every town, which is basically a depiction of London. And he's part of this fraternal order, basically, of technocrats called Wings of the World. And this was an interesting little clip.
So that's the sort of man your boss is. Not an unusual type. Everywhere we find these little semi-military upstarts robbing and fighting. That's what endless warfare has led to. Brigandage. What else could happen? But we, who are all that are left of the old engineers and mechanics, have pledged ourselves to salvage the world. We have the airways, all that's left of them. We have the seas. And we have ideas in common. The brotherhood of efficiency. The Freemasonry of science. We're the last trustees of civilization when everything else has failed.
I've been waiting for this. I'm yours to command.
Not mine. Not mine. No more bosses. Civilization's to command.
Tell him he'll have to come. He won't come on foot.
Well, we'll have to carry him.
I don't know what'll happen to me, sir, if you don't come.
Yeah, the Brotherhood of Efficiency. The Freemasonry of Science. That's what H.G. Wells was envisioning back in the 30s. And so, of course, obviously, certain things didn't play out in the same way as the book because, they faked the moon landings in 1969, whereas in the book, that basically happens at the very end once they get into 2034 or whatever. And that's interesting too. But this whole idea of exhausting the world with all the war and the division and their flags, and I mean, we see that's been the script that has been ongoing through World War II, where they funded both sides and created all this destruction and bloodshed so that they could come in and do Bretton Woods and create the UN and later the EU. And it's always that create the chaos, and so that you could create, bring the order out of the chaos. And this constant reapplication of that same formula, that same Hegelian dialectic, right? And here we are back on another 9/11 anniversary. And I remember when 9/11 happened, and I remember hearing these infamous words by George W. Bush.
Every nation in every region now has a decision to make. Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists.
And then around a decade later, learning about Building 7 and finally looking at the footage again because of the internet and realizing that, there's no way this was done by a bunch of Saudis whose passport survived the explosion and landed on the sidewalk and all that nonsense. But the realization was that, yes, somehow, at some point, the demonization of the terrorists would switch from being over there, in the deserts of Iraq and Afghanistan, and eventually would come home. I mean, that's what the Patriot Act was clearly designed to do. And, we've known this for almost a quarter of a century now, what the game plan for all this was ultimately. But the question is how are they going to make that transition? How are they going to go from using patriotism to go fight wars, on the other side of the world, to building the police state and then bringing it back, home to the homeland? And here we are in the second term, 45, 47. We have National Guard being deployed in Washington, D.C., and if it was being done by the other side of the political aisle, everybody'd be freaking out. But because it's Trump and because it's in the name of fighting crime, it's so absurd that, everyone's just kind of in a state of ambivalence and cheering it on, and then ICE being deployed in the name of doing raids on immigrants and snatching people off the street. But the crazy thing is that we've now reached a point where at any point along the way, whether it was during the Obama years, I remember Jade Helm and everyone freaking out about Jade Helm. And so it's always like false alarm. However, all the conspiracy theorists are making much ado about nothing. It's that frog in the pot with everything. Remember when it was crazy conspiracy theory that your cell phone was actually tracking your location or listening to you, and now somehow everybody accepts that as just normal? But how are you going to get it? How are you going to get patriotic, conservative, Second Amendment, First Amendment, libertarian type Americans to go along with a surveillance state? How are you going to try and get them on board with this? Well, you use the left-right paradigm, and during the Biden, remember just a few years ago when Biden was the president and he was talking about how white supremacy was the greatest threat to America? We had that crazy, creepy press conference with the red background, and it was like the most fascist thing you'd ever seen. And so the pendulum was swinging one way, and now the pendulum is swinging the other way. And when one side's calling out the unconstitutional actions, then the other side calls them crazy, tells them to shut up, and we just get played off each other over and over again, back and forth. And so, you take those words of George W. Bush about the terrorists, and then you juxtapose it against what was just announced from the White House, and it's pretty staggering to see how far we've come.
To my great fellow Americans, I am filled with grief and anger at the heinous assassination of Charlie Kirk on a college campus in Utah. Charlie inspired millions, and tonight, all who knew him and loved him
are united in shock and horror.
Charlie was a patriot who devoted his life to the cause of open debate and the country that he loved so much, the United States of America. He fought for liberty, democracy, justice, and the American people. He's a martyr for truth and freedom, and there's never been anyone who was so respected by youth. Charlie was also a man of
deep faith.
And we take comfort in the knowledge that he is now at peace with God in heaven. We ask God to watch over them in this terrible hour of heartache and pain. This is a
dark moment for America.
For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today.
And it must stop right now.
My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to other political violence, including the organizations that fund it and support it, as well as those who go after our judges, law enforcement officials, and everyone else who brings order to our country. From the attack on my life in Butler, Pennsylvania last year, which killed a husband and father, to the attacks on ICE agents, to the vicious murder of a healthcare executive in the streets of New York, to the shooting of House Majority Leader Steve Scalise and 3 others, radical left political violence has hurt too many innocent people and taken too many lives. Tonight, I ask all Americans to commit themselves to the American values for which Charlie Kirk lived and died, the values of free speech, citizenship, the rule of law, and the patriotic devotion and love of God. Charlie was the best of America, and the monster who attacked him was attacking our whole country. 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 Attacking our whole country.
I want to take a minute and talk to you about something serious that I've been working on behind the scenes. I'm building something called Gideon, or in Hebrew we call it Gidon. This is the first real-time AI-powered threat detection system for law enforcement and schools. It's a system that scans the open web, social media, Reddit, Discord, gaming chats, and flags real behavioral signals before someone picks up a rifle and walks into a school. We're talking grievance buildup, martyrdom language, tactical planning. These are the same patterns that I've been seeing for years before every major attack. Now flagged before it happens.
I think that's an understatement. I think this is a hate crime and a lot more. And I appreciate that Kash Patel is stepping in and saying, you know what, let's look at this as a federal crime. Obviously, the shooter is deceased, a self-inflicted gunshot wound. But it is so important that the FBI steps in and discovers how this happened and investigates it as a hate crime or possible domestic terrorism.
Yeah, it's amazing to me because I want to put this up. The Minneapolis police chief, he gave a couple of news conferences today, Aaron Cohen, and some pretty compelling information along the way. He said the following here. I want to get your take on this.
We're also aware of a manifesto that the shooter had timed to be released on YouTube. This manifesto appeared to show him at the scene and included some disturbing writings. That content has since been taken down with the assistance of the FBI, and it now remains under active review by our investigators.
Investigators identified an individual as the roommate of Robinson. Investigators interviewed that roommate, who stated that his roommate, referring to Robinson, made a joke on Discord. Investigators asked if he would show them the messages on Discord. He opened it and showed several messages to investigators and allowed investigators to take photos of the screen as each message was shown by Robinson's roommate. These photos consisted of various messages, including content of messages between the phone contact named Tyler with an emoji icon and Robinson's roommate's device. The content of these messages included messages affiliated with the contact Tyler, stating a need to retrieve a rifle from a drop point, leaving the rifle in a bush, messages related to visually watching the area where a rifle was left, and a message referring to having left the rifle wrapped in a towel.
And yeah, so that's, I don't know. It's one of those things where I feel like we're getting more and more into the territory where if you can't see what's happening for yourself, I don't know how anyone's going to be able to convince you of what is happening. And so last night, being the night of the shooting, the Charlie Kirk shooting, I mean, I was poring over this footage and going frame by frame and slow-moing, and I was like, I'm seeing all these anomalies, and I almost put up a short video, just with some music in the background just to kind of put it out there. But then ultimately I came away going, dude, this is already so loaded and controversial that, ultimately squabbling over whether it was an orchestrated hoax or an orchestrated hit is really kind of immaterial at this point. Either way, it's going to be used in the exact same way to the exact same end, and that little speech by Trump already kind of proved the point. Like, we already know how this is being applied in terms of the propaganda, trying to get the conservatives on board. It's, the same thing that's already been happening with the Catholic shooter thing just right before that, and then this guy who's on Fox News talking about his Gideon software, his ex-IDF or whatever. And yeah, that's like a big angle that they're going to try and get a lot of people to fixate on. As if Israel and America are like these two separate entities and one is really manipulating the other. I feel like if you're still kind of caught in that false paradigm, that false dichotomy, that false Hegelian thing, then yeah, I don't know what to tell them either, because yeah, this whole idea that countries are even really jostling and competing with each other at all is kind of one of the biggest, that's what all this theater is about. Which is what is so crazy when you go back to H.G. Wells and World War II, and you understand, the banking and corporate interests that were involved in all of that, and, building up all the different sides and creating the whole Cold War narrative that immediately followed, and, wars and rumors of wars. And it's weird because it's like, yeah, okay, I'm not trying to say that Trump is the Antichrist, but I think at this point it's pretty safe to say that he's an Antichrist. I mean, Bill Gates is pretty much an Antichrist in my view. Everything that he's been a part of and accepting all this praise as a philanthropist. I mean, do you think Bill Gates has probably killed more people than Hitler at this point? Maybe not in a bloody, gory, public execution style type way, but almost in a more sinister way of, we're saving all the poor people in Africa. So yeah, it's like, as much as people want to go like, I don't know, I'm not trying to pass judgment on whether Charlie Kirk, some people say he was a Christian, and some people say he was a Freemason, and some days I'm just relieved that it's like, yeah, I don't have to worry about figuring out every last dude who's in the mainstream / alternative media space and trying to figure out if Tucker Carlson's legit or Charlie Kirk, or because they profess. I mean, yeah, great. Tucker's coming out with the 9/11 series now. Like, okay, I don't know. I feel pretty jaded a lot of the time. I feel pretty cynical these days with a lot of stuff. So I'm not trying to say I know whether, God knows. Nobody's going to fool God, right? But yeah, regardless of whether it was some sort of like thing that he was part of, it looks like CGI when I look at the dot moving across his neck to me. That's the weirdest part. What is this dot? And people go like, how could they fake that with, all these different camera angles and all these different... Have you seen AI? There's definitely these weird dudes making hand signals. They're standing kind of close. So you either have a lot of confidence in the shooter, or there is no shooter and it's sound effect. You guys already know what I think about the Trump fake assassination. So it's like everything's on the table. At the same time, they're not against killing somebody in cold blood or killing millions of people, and that's the whole point. And so yeah, I'm not trying to get sucked into arguing over Kirk himself, but Trump and Bill Gates, I think at this point, we know what their agenda is. They have sold their souls to Satan. Yeah, it's weird. I was watching this Things to Come movie and The Wings of the World and thinking about the Luftwaffe and the Nazis and Operation Paperclip and von Braun coming to join NASA. And then it's like, yeah, here we are. It's so weird, dude. Here we are in 2025 and Trump is moving the Space Force headquarters back to Huntsville, where the original batch of space Nazis was stationed there in Alabama. It's so crazy. The more you know about, like, our history, it's still crazy to even think about NASA being run by Nazis who, totally used slave labor in Barramundi. But supposedly von Braun, all he really wanted to do was go to the stars. He never wanted to, like, bomb London with the V2 rocket. He really wanted to go to space. But remember when they shot a V2 rocket and hit the moon? Remember when the Russians did that? Oh yeah, they kind of memory hold that. I love telling people that story. That they bullseyed the moon with the V2 rocket, and people think you're just like making stuff up. I'm not the one making stuff up, but they are. They've been retconning the scripts over and over and over again. But I don't know, dude. All this stuff with Europe, and it really does feel like they're trying to push us to another world war. Like, the more I listen to, stuff on No Agenda and hear all these different clips going on with NATO and Queen Ursula, the Dutch Prime Minister guy, they're all on board for going another round to just bomb the current. But then at the same time, you have all this weird programming that, like, everyone remembers that Civil War movie that came out, the Obama movie, right? Wasn't that on Netflix? I never saw it, but predictive programming, dude, it's a real thing, and it's been going on for a long time. Pretty much ever since movies were invented, it's been predictive programming. That's what's crazy, is that's what movies have always been, and television and all this stuff. Yeah, so at the end of things to come, so they've already created their like utopia on Earth, but then there's this guy, the sculptor artist guy, who's like, why do we have to keep sacrificing ourselves for the sake of progress? Why can't we just stop and be happy and be content? And he's sort of like the villain. He's portrayed as like the terrorist, and he starts this uprising to try and go destroy the space gun. Which the space gun is how they're going to shoot a projectile, basically a rocket to the moon. And then Cabal's grandson is like the leader of this new utopian society, and his daughter volunteers to go on the rocket with this other guy. And so the mob wants to stop them from sacrificing their children to the space gun. It was pretty interesting because it's like a retro-futuristic depiction of sacrificing your, the maiden to the volcano or to the gods, except it's like the name of science and progress. And so they hop in the helicopter and fly there to try and fire the space gun before the mob can go destroy it. And yeah, some of these sets and shots were like amazing for 1936. But so that's the big like climax of the movie, and then they fire the thing, and then the grandson Cabal gives the speech at the end where it's like, the universe or nothing. And yeah, it's basically like transhumanist propaganda from the 1930s. And it's like, oh yeah, I guess it wasn't just Hitler and the Nazis with their idea of the Übermensch, but it really was like these Fabian socialists and Darwinists and humanists in the free West who were thinking all this stuff up, who were pretty obsessed with this whole idea and dreaming of creating this utopian world without God and without limitation, without ever stopping, where like progress is our religion. That's our destiny. It's like either we achieve mastery over the laws of physics and nature and everything, we just conquer every limitation, or we die as pointless animals. I mean, it's pretty crazy. Like, it reveals that, like, yeah, this is humanism. This is the idolatry of man. And this is the same thing that all these, like, Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and Sam Altman and all these guys are openly deluded into. And here's our government totally on board with it. Larry Ellison, oh yeah, AI is going to cure cancer, and Bill Gates talking about how we're going to have a doctor for every kid in Africa. The cabal is real, and it's like right out in the open. It's not a secret. What is going on behind closed doors at this point? Not much.
Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump in the previous administration were big advocates for this effort to create a U.S. government agency called HARPA, which is like this health DARPA. And actually Biden created it, but under different metrics. He said it was about curing cancer and called it ARPA-H. They moved the H to the back. But the architect of HARPA is this guy named Bob Wright, who was a longtime friend of Trump's because he ran NBC Universal, which hosted Trump's The Apprentice show. And so Bob Wright was basically pitching this program, and the biggest advocates again for it were Kushner and Ivanka. And the program, the acronym for it is Safe Homes. And that's kind of a long acronym, so again, I'm not going to remember exactly what it stands for. But I've written about it in the past, and I'm sure if you search for it, you'll be able to find it. But essentially what this program was saying is that it was a way to stop mass shootings in the United States before they happened. And so this was being pitched in 2019, late 2019, when there was a spate of mass shootings in the United States. And essentially this program argued that they could stop mass shootings before they happen if they use an artificial intelligence algorithm to analyze American social media posts and then identify early warning signs of neuropsychiatric violence. And then based on that and data on perhaps the poster's mental health data or any other sort of antecedent could then basically result in court-ordered medical interventions, preventative detention like house arrest, all sorts of things, essentially criminalizing social media posts in the name of stopping crime before it happens. So this is definitely something that has been considered by government for some time, and it's definitely something I would argue the infrastructure for it has been advanced in a bipartisan way by Republican and Democratic administrations alike. It's definitely, in my opinion, a long-standing national security agenda that is, if not openly, bipartisanly supported. It is so, at least privately, because you can see that through the policy actions of really every administration since 9/11. So I think people need to be very aware that the threat for this type of system being implemented more widely does exist because the infrastructure is there, and there have been presidents in the past that have considered pretty disconcerting overreach as far as that's concerned. And every government in the United States or every presidential administration has expanded Palantir's contracting. So now, in the wake of COVID-19, Palantir has all of Americans' health data, basically. They were given that during COVID-19. They were a key partner in Operation Warp Speed, deciding which groups would, receive the vaccine first based on all sorts of metrics. And in doing that, obtained extreme access to Americans' health data. And there's no evidence that they don't share that with intelligence or add that to these profiles that they build on Americans. A lot of the argument for putting AI in charge of, major decision making, whether law enforcement or elsewhere, is that it's innovative, it's cost efficient, it's cheaper, but isn't necessarily better. And I think this is going to be an argument that's going to be important going forward with the so-called Department of Government Efficiency to be headed by Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. A lot of those guys obviously have a lot of interest in particular AI algorithms and AI companies, some of which they run. Elon Musk in particular was recently funded very heavily by Larry Fink's BlackRock, the low-risk totalitarian government guy. And, if the talking point is, what if the Doge talking point becomes, by increasing efficiency, we're replacing a lot of the human workforce in government with AI? Would that actually functionally shrink government in terms of the size and, influence and power that government programs have over people's lives? Or is it just, basically maintaining the same size, but you're reducing the human workforce and subbing them out for an AI? And I think people should definitely carefully consider a lot of the proposals coming forth of there, because a lot of these big Silicon Valley guys, Elon Musk included, his grandfather was actually the but the head of the Canadian branch of Technocracy, Inc., which wanted to see the United States merge with Canada and Greenland and become basically a North American technate, and basically have this system of experts and engineers and AI essentially, but this was sort of before AI was invented, but technocrats now argue for AI, that should run society instead of really a democratically elected government, ultimately, that it's better to have society sort of micromanaged by the experts, so to speak. And the undisputed expert on technocracy is Patrick Wood, for anyone that's interested in learning more about that and Technocracy, Inc. and how it developed over time. And it's been a very, big interest to sort of these elite clans in the U.S. with a lot of influence, like the Rockefeller family.
There they go. That faint gleam of light. I've feel that what we've done is monstrous. What they've done is magnificent. Will they come back? Yes, and go again and again, till the landing is made and the moon is conquered. This is only a beginning. But if they don't come back, my son and your daughter, what of that cabal? Then, presently, others will go. Oh, God, is there never to be any age of happiness? Is there never to be any rest? Rest enough for the individual man. Too much and too soon, and we call it death. But for man, no rest and no ending. He must go on, conquest beyond conquest. First, this little planet and its winds and waves, and then all the laws of mind and matter that restrain him. Then the planets about him, and at last, out across immensity to the stars. And when he has conquered all the deeps of space and all the mysteries of time, still he will be beginning.
But we're such little creatures. Poor humanity is so fragile, so weak. Little animals.
Little animals. And if we're no more than animals, we must snatch each little scrap of happiness and live and suffer and pass, mattering no more than all the other animals do or have done. It is this or that, all the universe or nothingness. Which shall it be, husband? Which shall it be?